They found her at the bottom of the pit, mud-covered, wailing, and gripping a "Welcome to Cedar Ridge Neighborhood Council" clipboard like it was the last piece of land above water. The sheriff's incident log called it unlawful interference. I called it poetic justice with a touch of physics. My name is Daniel Whitaker. I moved to the outskirts of Cedar Ridge, a so-called private community run by rule-obsessed enforcers. But my new home sat on land just outside their authority. My property, my terms. That didn't sit well with Beverly Crane, the council chair, whose hobbies included measuring shrubs and critiquing porch furniture. She insisted that any home visible from Cedar Ridge roads should abide by their collective expectations, mine included. The first time I met Beverly, she stood on my porch holding a clipboard and laser level. Her voice, coated in fake sweetness, informed me that my mailbox was 3 inches too high and disturbing the visual harmony of the street. I politely told her I wasn't part of her neighborhood council. Her face tightened like of ice. She snapped back that boundaries were a formality, and community aesthetics were a shared responsibility. At first, she took the bureaucratic route. Daily letters arrived, each more absurd than the last. She cited my grass for exceeding height limits by ½ an inch, my driveway for an oil stain, and my bird feeder for attracting unapproved avian species. When I stopped replying, she escalated by bringing concerned residents to my home, claiming I ran an illegal scrapyard. I had one car, a 1967 Camaro restoration project, parked on my own driveway. Then came the real push. One morning, bright orange cones blocked my entrance with a laminated notice saying my property was under review for integration into the council. I moved the cones and went to work. When I returned, there were more cones, and a chain across my driveway. A second note claimed the access restriction would remain until my compliance was resolved. That night, I installed security cameras. Beverly didn't know it yet, but she was about to become the star of her own downfall. The next morning, I was awoken by heavy machinery. From my window, I saw Beverly waving her arms at a backhoe operator, pointing at my driveway. By the time I got outside, half of it was gone, replaced by a deep trench. She smiled smugly and announced that the council had discovered a utility easement and was beginning construction on a pollinator garden for community wellness. I asked if she had permits. She shook her clipboard and declared that council approval overruled local regulations. The backhoe operator looked uneasy, his shirt identifying him as a rental service tech, not a licensed contractor. By midday, my driveway had transformed into a 12-foot pit. She'd even installed flimsy plywood edges and a crooked sign that read, "Future site of the Cedar Ridge Pollinator Park." Beverly stood beside the crater, explaining to onlookers how this would boost nearby home values. What she didn't realize was that my cameras had captured it all, including her telling the operator to dig deep enough to prevent me from simply filling it back in. The footage also showed her telling her assistant, "If Daniel can't drive out, he'll either cave in or move out." She laughed, adding that she'd already picked the wildflowers for the site. Her assistant, a jittery woman named Carol, asked if it was legal. Beverly replied with an eye roll that leadership sometimes requires bending the rules. I had a contact at the city's zoning office, Mark Reyes, someone I'd once helped with a foundation drainage issue. When I showed him the video, his jaw dropped. He said what she did wasn't just code violation, it bordered on criminal obstruction, unsafe excavation, and trespassing. He made a few calls. By early afternoon, the sheriff, city inspectors, and a district attorney investigator were on their way. Meanwhile, Beverly had returned to the scene with a photographer in tow, ready to document her vision. She stood proudly beside the pit, posing while boasting about Cedar Ridge's commitment to beautification. The soil was still moist, and the plywood edging weak. As she stepped back to adjust her pose, her heel caught a board. She flailed, her clipboard flew, and she plunged into the pit she had created. The photographer froze, stunned, as her screams echoed through the crater. When deputies arrived, they found her covered in muck, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline, screaming about legal action. Deputy Ross asked if she was hurt. She demanded I be arrested for sabotage. Ross calmly asked, "Who dug the hole?" There was silence. Then she quietly muttered, "It was a council initiative." They didn't rush to help her out. First, they photographed the scene, especially the equipment rental form she'd signed, using council funds without authorization. Eventually, they lowered a ladder and pulled her out. Still dripping with mud, she tried to assert dominance, claiming that neighborhood regulations superseded city law. That earned a laugh, and a pair of handcuffs. As she was loaded into the cruiser, she shouted that she had immunity as the council president. Deputy Ross corrected her, saying, "Neighborhood chairs don't get diplomatic protections." The photographer, who captured the whole thing, sold the footage to a local station. Within hours, it went viral. The title, "Neighborhood Queen Falls into Her Own Trap." An investigation revealed Beverly had misused over $15,000 in council funds, everything from equipment rental to unauthorized design contracts. She'd faked permits and even commissioned landscape blueprints without approval. The council board was horrified when the truth surfaced. My property was a mess. The trench had destabilized my garage foundation, leading to severe structural cracks. A structural engineer estimated the damages at over $20,000, not counting the cost of my ruined Camaro, now tilted at an awkward angle. She also broke a water line, flooding the yard and killing a mature oak planted by my father decades ago. The backhoe operator testified that Beverly had specifically instructed him to dig as close to the garage as possible for maximum impact. She told him, "Sometimes, to clean things up, you need to make a bit of a mess, and Daniel's in the way." He admitted he felt uncomfortable but took the job for double pay, cash up front. 6 months later, Beverly stood trial. She claimed she was protecting community image. The prosecutor countered that destroying private property and endangering lives wasn't image control, it was criminal intent. When the jury watched my footage, capturing her entire scheme in crystal clarity, they shook their heads in disbelief. Her attorney argued she was simply overenthusiastic. The prosecution brought forward 17 previous complaints, harassment, unauthorized entry, and excessive fines. Apparently, I wasn't her first victim, just the first to have evidence. Former neighbors shared horror stories. An elderly woman testified that Beverly fined her $400 for using the wrong mulch color. Another family said she banned birthday balloons, claiming they were visual pollutants. A father testified that Beverly once trespassed into his yard to photograph party decorations she claimed violated the temporary installations policy. The most damning evidence came from Beverly's ex-vice chair, Harold Wynn. He testified that she maintained a hidden, resident scoring system, awarding or deducting points based on rule compliance, and punishing those with low scores. She called it the Community Unity Index. Harold called it a blacklist. The jury deliberated just 30 minutes before convicting her on all counts: destruction of property, fraud, trespassing, and unauthorized use of council funds. The judge, visibly frustrated, delivered a blistering rebuke on the dangers of unchecked power in neighborhood associations. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison, ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution, and banned from participating in any community board in the state for 5 years. When the sentence was read, Beverly broke down, sobbing that her entire future was destroyed over a harmless beautification effort. I looked at the judge. He didn't flinch. Neither did I.